Now I've got this single point that moves around the XY plane. But it's not random. This point is following a path that I care about. I care about this path because it's the curve belonging to some equation, but it's not a function. This curve does not represent y as a function of x because it fails the vertical line test in many different x coordinates. However, it looks like I'm able to represent the x coordinate and the y coordinate separately as functions of some other variable. So in this metaphor, I'm using time as my independent variable. And then it turns out that both the x and the y coordinates are themselves dependent on that time. So if I stop here, some amount of time has passed, looks like 2.7 if I'm following that slider. And I'll have some x coordinate and I'll have some y coordinate. I can start the playback again, stop it somewhere else. I'll have a different amount of time. Here I've got 4.6 units of time. And I've got a different x coordinate and a different y coordinate. Well, maybe this tracing idea is more useful to me than the idea of just graphing the curve all at once. Maybe this point that moves around the plane can leave sort of a trail and show me where it has been. So as this point moves around, it leaves a trail that carves out exactly the curve that I started this problem with. So again, this point here changes depending on the current time. So maybe I'll call this a variable t for time. And there's two different functions involved here. One of the functions, right now I've called that f of t, tells me the x coordinate. The other function here tells me the y coordinate. And you can just look at it go, and it traces out the curve that I'm interested in. So now instead of one equation, which is not a function of x, I have two functions, one for my x coordinate and the other for my y coordinate. Now, I'm doing some really heavy lifting on the alphabet here. Since I am using x and y as dependent variables, let's just go ahead and say that both x and y are functions. So now the function that tells me where I am on the horizontal axis, I'm going to call x of t. The function that tells me where I am on the vertical axis, I'm going to call y of t, just to make things a little bit more convenient, so I don't end up with more letters running around in my calculations than I have to. So I can imagine giving different instructions to this point that moves around And if I give it different instructions, then I should see different curves being traced out of the XY plane.